Let's start with Cathy calling in from Southern California. Hey, Cathy, you're first up on the Larry O'Connor Show.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
Good afternoon. Yes, I liken this to the French Revolution, when the poor were so sick and tired of being poor that they made a revolution on the extremely wealthy. So Venice, Santa Monica, Palos Verdes, Ranchos. I lived in California my whole life. They get tired of the rich being rich and the poor being poor. What's your agreement on that?
Well. First of all, Cathy,
yes.
you're sort of supporting. Cathy,
they did revolutionize.
Well, not really. If they did revolutionize, then there wouldn't be disparities between. Cathy, they sure did. They chopped. So you're on the side of the people who chopped off King Louis's head. Okay.
I'm not saying that. So, it was a fact. It's a history.
It is history. You're right, Cathy. The question, they didn't actually fix anything, though, because there's still disparities between rich and poor and everywhere in this world. So it's sort of a losing cause, number one. Number two, you're sort of supporting my hypothesis that Mike Bonin is allowing this to happen and not doing anything to intervene because he thinks that he needs to fix the disparity between rich and poor. You're agreeing with me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So here's the interesting thing about it, Cathy.
You have to address the poor.
Cathy, so here's the interesting thing about it. The poor who are living on the streets in Venice right now, they're not the ones who are angry. It's the people whose neighborhoods are being destroyed that are angry, number one. The people who are poor are just sort of like living their life and living their best life for that matter.
But why are they poor?
But here's the second question, Cathy.
But why are they poor?
What do you mean, why are they poor? Why,
the government?
Why do you think they're poor because the government has taken their money?
They live in poverty.
Why do they live in poverty, Cathy? I have a better question. Do you live in poverty?
No, I do not.
Why not?
I work.
So now let's connect those dots. The people who are living in poverty, why are they living in poverty? Is it because they don't work?
They need to be addressed, and they need to be taken care of.
Wait, well, you don't need to be taken care of, Cathy. What makes you so much better than those people who are living on the streets? Other than the fact that you actually have some principles and values and decide that you're going to work.
They're a different class.
Really?
Yes.
Expand on that.
They're a different class because...
They're not in your class.
They're a different class.
Well, yeah, that means they're not in your class. If they're different, that means you're in one class and they're in another, right?
I don't know their class. I just know that they're...
Well, how do you know it's different?
They're poor. They're poor and they're destitute. Why do you have funds for the homeless? They're a different class.
Cathy, we got tons of funds for the homeless. We've got billions of dollars that's been pumped into this, but it keeps getting worse. Why do you think that is?
Well, for the first time in the century, Skid Row is being cleaned up.
Have you been down to Skid Row?
I used to work in L.A.
Okay.
At City Hall. And Skid Row, I never went there, but for the first time in the history of America, Skid Row is actually being cleaned up.
All right, Cathy, I'm not sure. You listen. We can disagree on our opinions, but we have to have facts. And Skid Row is actually larger exponentially than it has ever been. I think it's a lot different than when you worked in downtown. But I think that's what's most revealing there in our exchange, Cathy, and I do appreciate the call, and I hope everybody sort of marinates on this. Cathy is not poor and is not destitute and is not living on the streets in Venice because she works. And yet she can't bring herself to point out that perhaps a lot of the people who are living in those conditions are doing so because, in fact, they don't work. And when confronted with that, the only response is, well, they're a different class. Well, you know what? I don't think they're a different class. I don't have that level of low expectations of my fellow man. I think that as soon as we are all challenged with the idea that we will not be allowed to live in our own filth, we are not allowed to just take up residence wherever we wish, We aren't allowed to disrupt other people's lives. We are part of a civilization, and that means that we get to enjoy the freedoms that our country gives us, but also with responsibility. Certain responsibilities, that means we must take care of ourselves. And unless we are incapable of doing so, we shall do that and not force our fellow man to take care of us. If we can all agree to that simple compact, then we solve a lot of these problems. Because no, we're not a different class. I don't believe in classes. I believe we're all human beings, we're all Americans with the same responsibilities. And if we are compelled to live up to those responsibilities, rather than empowered to literally defecate on our city streets, then we move one step closer to fixing the problem. But it starts with us being able to confront it honestly, like Cathy and I just did, and then facing the reality of that awkward silence that you heard when the pieces start to fit together and you realize, oh, here's the path towards fixing it.